She pounded on my door so hard I thought she'd break it down. Before I could even step outside, I heard her shrill voice yelling, "Sheriff, arrest him, he doesn't belong here." When I pulled the door open, there she was, Karen, standing with 4 men in green shirts that read, "HOA Police." They carried batons and shotguns, puffing up their chests like they owned the whole street. Karen's face was red with anger as she pointed at me, her words sharp like knives. "You're trespassing on HOA property and these officers will take you down if you don't leave immediately." The men moved forward, trying to look intimidating, but something was off. Their uniforms didn't match, their badges looked cheap, and their voices shook when they spoke. Karen kept shouting, "We run this neighborhood, you answer to us." The neighbors peeked through their blinds, some even filming from across the street. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't even step back. Instead, I folded my arms and let a small smile slip across my face. They didn't know who they were standing in front of. Karen thought she had called her own private army, but she had no idea the man she was screaming at was the real sheriff of this county. "Is that so?" I said slowly, watching their fake badges glint in the sun. "Then maybe you should explain this to the sheriff's department." Karen blinked, confused. One of the men muttered, "Wait, what?" But it was too late. The real police cruiser had already pulled up behind them. The cruiser doors slammed, and 2 uniformed deputies stepped out, their real badges catching the light. Karen froze for a split second, then quickly spun around and pointed at me again. "That's him! He's the criminal! Arrest him now before he hurts someone!" Her voice cracked, desperate. But the deputies didn't move toward me. They walked right past her and stared at the so-called HOA police. One deputy narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am, where did you find these officers?" The men in green stiffened, clutching their batons tighter. Karen puffed out her chest, acting like she still controlled the scene. "These are HOA police. They're here to enforce community rules. He doesn't belong on this property." The deputy's jaw tightened. "There's no such thing as HOA police." His words cut through the air like a hammer. The fake cops shuffled nervously, glancing at each other. Karen, refusing to back down, stomped her heel into the grass. "Don't you dare question my authority. This man has been violating HOA regulations and I will not stand for it." I finally stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. "You might want to listen closely, Karen, because you're standing on my land." Gasps rippled from the neighbors now gathering outside. One of the deputies turned to me and nodded respectfully. Karen's face twisted in disbelief. "Your land? No, this entire street is under HOA control," she barked, but I pulled a folded set of papers from my pocket and held them up. "Funny, because according to county records, this property isn't part of your HOA at all, and you've just tried to trespass on a sheriff's home with fake officers." The color drained from the fake cops' faces. Karen stuttered, trying to find her words, but all that came out was a shaky, That can't be right." Karen's mouth opened and closed like she was searching for air. But before she could spit out another lie, one of her fake cops stepped forward, his hand shaking as he pointed at me. "He's bluffing! Don't listen to him!" But the deputy standing beside him suddenly grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back with ease. The man yelped, dropping his baton. The other 3 backed up fast, their tough act crumbling in seconds. The crowd of neighbors had grown larger now, phones raised high, recording every second. Karen spun around, realizing the entire street was watching her lose control. "Turn those off! You can't film me! This is harassment!" she screeched, but no one listened. Every eye was on her as the deputies secured the first fake cop in handcuffs. I took a step closer, locking eyes with her. My voice dropped lower, calm but cutting. "Karen, you just brought fake officers onto my porch, threatened me, and tried to order my arrest. Do you even realize what crimes you've just committed?" Her lip trembled, but she forced herself to sneer. "I don't care who you are. I run this neighborhood. You'll regret crossing me." She turned toward the last man holding a shotgun. "Do it! Show him we mean business!" But instead of moving, the man let the shotgun slip from his hands and raised both arms in the air. "I'm done! I'm not going to jail for this crazy lady!" His voice shook with fear. Another neighbor shouted from across the street, "Looks like the HOA just got busted." Laughter broke out, cutting Karen's power into pieces. And then came the real twist. The deputy, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward, looking directly at Karen. His voice was cold. "Ma'am, impersonating law enforcement is a felony. You're under arrest." Her eyes went wide, and for the first time, Karen had no words. Karen stumbled back as the deputy reached for her wrists, her voice shrill and panicked now. "Wait, no, you can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. I own this neighborhood." Her words echoed down the street, but instead of respect, she got chuckles and gasps from the watching crowd. I crossed my arms, keeping my eyes on her as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. "Karen, you don't even own this sidewalk, and you sure don't own me." But just when it seemed like it was over, one of the fake cops, bigger than the rest, took a desperate chance. He bolted toward his car parked at the curb, fumbling for something under the seat. The deputies tensed, hands moving toward their holsters, but I raised a hand. "Hold on, let's see what he thinks he's hiding." The man pulled out a thick folder, waving it in the air. "I've got proof, signed authority from the HOA board. We're legit." His voice cracked as he flipped through the papers. Karen's face lit up with a wild grin. "Yes! Show them! Tell them I was right all along!" The deputy snatched the folder, flipping quickly through the documents, his brow furrowed deeper with every page. Finally, he looked up at Karen with a sharp glare. "These signatures are forged, and this seal is from a print shop. You didn't just break the law, you faked legal documents to trick your own neighbors." Gasps filled the air. A neighbor whispered loudly, "She forged her own HOA authority." Another shouted, "We knew it! She's been lying this whole time." Karen's knees wobbled. No, this isn't happening. You don't understand." But her voice was drowned out by the sound of her own neighbors cheering. For the first time, the entire street wasn't afraid of her. They were against her. And I wasn't done yet. I leaned in close, my words quiet but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Karen, do you know what makes this even worse? You didn't just lie to your neighbors. You tried to pull this scam on the sheriff of this county." Her face went pale. The deputies tightened their grip on her arms, and I could see it. The realization sinking in that this time there was no way out. Karen thrashed against the deputies, her voice breaking into high-pitched screams. "This is a mistake. You're all making a mistake. I'll sue every single one of you." But no one was listening anymore. The neighbors had stepped closer, recording from every angle, their murmurs turning into bold laughter. The woman who used to terrify the whole street now looked small, trapped and exposed. One deputy read her rights as he guided her toward the cruiser, but I stayed where I was, calm and steady. My eyes shifted to the remaining fake cops, two of them still standing like statues, afraid to move. "You've got two choices," I told them, my voice cutting through the noise. "Walk away and face charges later, or come clean right now." One of the men dropped to his knees, hands raised. "She paid us. She said it was legal, that she had power over this neighborhood." His words cracked under the weight of guilt. The crowd gasped again, but I wasn't surprised. Karen always did have a way of using people to get what she wanted. Karen spun her head around, hair flying wild, her eyes burning into him. "Shut up, don't say another word," she screeched. But it was too late. The confession had already been caught on half a dozen cell phones. That's when the second twist hit. The quiet deputy, the one who had spoken the least, pulled something out of his vest pocket. It was a tiny device blinking red, a hidden camera. "Sheriff," he said to me with a sharp nod, "we've been running surveillance on this HOA for months. She just handed us everything we needed on video." Karen's knees buckled, her voice turning to a whisper. "Surveillance?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You thought you ran this neighborhood? Turns out you've been running right into our case the whole time." Her eyes widened in pure terror as the deputies pushed her into the back of the cruiser. For once, the great HOA queen had no more commands left to give. The cruiser door slammed shut, and for a moment the street buzzed with whispers and shaky laughter. Neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid Karen now stood together, almost relieved, almost celebrating. But the deputies weren't done. The one with the hidden camera motioned to the others. "Check the trunk of that car. If she's been running a scam this big, there's more we need to see." They popped the trunk, and sure enough, boxes upon boxes sat stacked inside. Fake violation notices, forged HOA letters with county seals, even envelopes stuffed with cash. One deputy held up a stack of envelopes. "Looks like she's been fining her own neighbors and pocketing the money." Gasps erupted. A man in the crowd shouted, "She took $2,000 from me for a fence violation that never even existed." Another yelled, "She said she'd tow my truck if I didn't pay her cash." Karen banged her head against the cruiser window, screaming muffled protests. "Lies! All lies! I was protecting property values." But her voice was drowned out by the neighbors finally finding their courage. For the first time, people weren't scared of her. They were angry. One woman stepped forward, her phone shaking in her hands. "Sheriff, I've got texts from her, threats. She said if I didn't pay, she'd make sure CPS came for my kids." Her eyes filled with tears. The deputy took her phone gently, nodding. "Thank you, Ma'am. This is evidence now." Karen's face slammed against the glass, her eyes wide with panic. "No, that's not true. I never—" She cut herself off, realizing every word was being recorded. I walked to the center of the street, my voice carrying over the noise. "For months, she made you believe you had no choice. She scared you into silence, but the truth is, she never had any power at all." The crowd erupted into cheers. For the first time, the neighborhood didn't look divided. They stood together, unified by the truth, and Karen, once untouchable, was now just another criminal locked in the back of a cruiser. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't over yet, because someone as bold as Karen never works alone. The crowd was still buzzing, but my gut told me this ran deeper than Karen's obsession with control. Scams this big, with fake cops and forged seals, don't happen without someone pulling strings in the background. The quiet deputy, who had exposed the hidden camera, walked up beside me. He lowered his voice so only I could hear. "Sheriff, the documents we found in her trunk, some of them are signed by a board member, a real one. Looks like Karen wasn't acting alone." I narrowed my eyes. "Which one?" He handed me a file pulled straight from the box. My stomach tightened when I saw the name. Richard Bowen, the HOA's treasurer. A man who had been living here for years, respected by many, the kind of guy neighbors trusted with their savings. If his name was on those papers, it meant this wasn't just Karen's madness. It was organized. Before I could even say his name aloud, a voice rang out from the edge of the crowd. "What's going on here?" Richard himself had stepped out from his two-story house, acting calm, almost bored. He strolled toward us in his golf shirt and loafers, holding a glass of iced tea like nothing was wrong. All this noise for a simple HOA matter? The neighbors shifted uncomfortably, whispers spreading like wildfire. Karen slammed her fists against the cruiser window, screaming through the glass, "Richard, don't let them do this to me. Tell them we're in this together." The entire street went dead silent. Richard froze for a fraction of a second, then forced a laugh. "She's delusional. I don't know what she's talking about." But the deputy holding the forged documents raised them high for the crowd to see. "Funny, because your name is all over this paperwork." Gasps ripped through the neighborhood. Phones turned toward Richard now. His calm facade cracked, and his knuckles tightened around the glass of iced tea until it shattered in his hand. Blood dripped down his fingers, but his smile twisted into something darker. "You really don't know who you're messing with," he muttered. And in that moment I realized Karen was just the opening act. The real fight was about to begin. Richard didn't flinch as the glass cut deeper into his palm. He just let the shards fall, his eyes fixed on me with a cold, steady glare. Karen was sloppy. I'm not. You think this ends with her in cuffs? He gave a low chuckle. This neighborhood runs on money. My money! You put me in that cruiser and half the city hall goes down with me. The crowd gasped. Neighbors looked at each other in disbelief, whispering frantically. Karen slammed her fists against the cruiser window again, shrieking, "Don't let him leave me here, Richard. We had a deal." But Richard didn't even glance at her. He was calm. Too calm. I stepped forward, my boots crunching on the asphalt, my badge gleaming under the sun. "Richard, you just confessed in front of 50 witnesses, all with cameras rolling. You're done." For the first time, his smile faded. One of the deputies moved in to cuff him, but Richard snapped his wrist forward, revealing a sleek black phone hidden under his sleeve. He tapped the screen once, and suddenly a car screeched around the corner, an unmarked black SUV with tinted windows. The doors flew open and two men in suits stepped out, scanning the street like watchdogs. The neighbors scattered back in fear, but I stood my ground. "So, this is your backup plan? Bring in more muscle to scare people into silence?" Richard's voice was low, almost a whisper, but everyone heard it. "Not silence! Control! Always control!" Before his men could take a step, sirens wailed from the opposite end of the block. More cruisers roared in, lights flashing, surrounding the SUV in seconds. Deputies poured out, weapons drawn, and in the chaos, Richard finally lost the last piece of his calm. His face twisted in fury as the cuffs locked around his wrists. The crowd erupted, cheers, shouts, even tears of relief. A neighbor yelled, "It's over!" Another shouted, "No one owns us anymore!" Phones captured every second as Richard and Karen were shoved into separate cruisers, their empire crumbling right where it began. I turned to the neighbors, raising my voice just enough to carry over the noise. "No one, no HOA, no bully, no fraud, has the right to take your land, your money, or your freedom. Not here, not in this country." The cheers grew louder, a mix of pride and raw relief. Families hugged, kids clapped, and for the first time in months, maybe years, this neighborhood felt like it actually belonged to the people who lived here. As the cruisers rolled away, Karen's muffled screams fading into the distance, I let out a slow breath. Justice wasn't always clean, but tonight it was undeniable. And deep down, I knew this would be the story the entire county would be talking about for years. The day the HOA tried to send fake cops to my door and found the real sheriff waiting instead.